All right, so Elon Musk recently decided to come out and share his thoughts on what he thinks are the current problems with the Democratic Party, and actually says in this clip that we're about to watch that he's going to be voting for a Republican in the upcoming elections for the first time in his life. So let's go ahead and jump into this clip because I think it's honestly absolutely fucking hilarious.
And I would class myself as a moderate, and neither Republican nor Democrat. And in fact, I have voted overwhelmingly for Democrats historically, overwhelmingly. Like I'm not sure. I might never have voted for a Republican, just to be clear.
Right.
Now this election, I will. The Democratic Party is overly controlled by the unions and by the trial lawyers, particularly the class action lawyers. And generally, if you'll see something that is not in the interest of the people, on the Democrat side, it's going to come because of the unions, which is just another form of monopoly, and the trial lawyers. That's where actions will be happening from the Democrat side that are not in the interest of the people. And then, to be fair, on the Republican side, there's if you say like where there's something like not ideal happening, it's because of corporate evil and religious zealotry. That's generally where the bad things will be coming from on the Republican side, that are not representative of the people. So. In the case of Biden, he is simply too much captured by the unions, which was not the case with Obama. So in the case of Obama, you could have, he was sort of quite reasonable, and I think he took more of a view that, obviously you need to take the concerns of the unions into account, but there are bigger issues at stake, and unfortunately Biden does not do that.
All right, so yeah, there's a lot to say about that. Obviously, on some points, I think that he was right, in saying that President Obama was comparatively not that friendly to unions, but I wouldn't consider that to be the reasonable position. I would consider that to be the corrupt position. Now, he also had some critiques of unions in there, some of which I think is mildly justified if you want to make a stretch of an argument that, some unions, especially the larger ones, do have some problems with corruption and, lack of true representation, democratic representation for the workers that make up those unions. That you could have a fair discussion about that, but in the broader generalized picture of what he's trying to paint here, right, he literally just said there that unions are another form of monopoly. Unions, which are workers comprising a democratic representation for themselves within the authoritarian structure of a capitalist enterprise, that to him is equivalent to a corporation having a monopoly in any given marketplace. What? Those are directly contradictory to each other. The entire point of having union representation under our capitalist formation of the economy is to give workers a say in that enterprise. It's not a monopoly. It is literally the precise opposite of that. It is a democracy being somewhat instilled in a massively corrupt and totalitarian system like capitalism. So on that front, it's completely disingenuous and bullshit arguments that he's putting forward there. But again, so much that he just said there is hilarious, right? Another thing that he said that I think was accurate is saying that when bad things come from the Republican Party, it's basically because of corporate evil and religious zealotry. That's 100% correct. But on the flip side of that, he said that Joe Biden is completely owned by the unions. In what world is that the case? I mean, you can make the case that, Joe Biden has a somewhat more pro-union National Labor Relations Board. I've given him credit for that. But even then, I mean, the NLRB is still dramatically underfunded, under-resourced. Biden wouldn't even come out publicly in favor of the Chris Small's Amazon labor union until really after it was successful in their efforts. He's not willing to take an affirmative stance on any of the union drives that we've been seeing. He's generally, in a rhetorical sense, more pro-union than most modern American presidents, but the bar for that is literally in hell. I mean, it's through the floor when you're comparing yourselves to other presidents like Trump, like even Obama, but George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., etc., Bill Clinton, all of these other presidents that have been actively hostile to unions. So to say that Joe Biden is in the pocket of big unions here in the country, it's completely ridiculous at face value. He's just mildly less anti-union and mildly on the rhetorical front more in line with supporting unions in a very tepid way. But those are the main things that I think he was saying in that clip. I think a lot of it is pretty funny at face value, given the fact that he says the problems with the Democratic Party are two things. Number one is class action lawyers. Okay, I wonder why somebody like the CEO of Tesla would have a problem with class action lawyers, as he is actively facing class action lawsuits for rampant discrimination against his black employees at a lot of these Tesla factories. So again, it's pretty laughable at face value. It's transparent what exactly his priorities are in making this type of commentary. Yeah, of course he's not going to like class action lawyers, as his personal company is facing lawsuits from those class action lawyers for some of the type of shit that they have been doing in their factories. But on top of that, again, I wonder why somebody like Elon Musk, the wealthiest man on the face of the planet, would be against the unions having disproportionate control within the Democratic Party. I mean, this is a guy who has engaged in rampant union busting at all of his companies, basically. But just as an example here from the New York Times, Tesla employees firing and Elon Musk tweet on union were illegal, the labor board rules. So this is back from 2021. The National Labor Relations Board on Thursday upheld a 2019 ruling that Tesla had illegally fired a worker involved in union organizing, that the company's chief executive Elon Musk had illegally threatened workers with the loss of stock options had they unionized. So this was actually started at least in 2019 under the Trump administration with a much more unfriendly National Labor Relations Board, and even they were saying that, yeah, Elon Musk is engaging in illegal union busting activities. So again, not too surprising that this guy would be actively against unions having a voice within the Democratic Party, or again, class action lawyers having some influence in the Democratic Party. But not exactly sure like what degree or what context he has a problem with class action lawyers outside of the direct implications for his own companies. So it's pretty funny that he would throw that out there, given the fact that we have publicly available knowledge that he has a direct incentive to hate on class action lawyers that are bringing cases against his corporations. But another reason why it's not surprising that somebody like Elon Musk would be voting for Republicans over Democrats right now. Just as a reminder here from a couple months ago when we were having those debates surrounding Build Back Better, Elon Musk slams Biden's Build Back Better bill and its electric car incentives. So this is a hilarious part. We're gonna get into some of the details here, but the electric car incentives that he had a problem with, it's again very transparent why he had a problem with it. It has direct implications for his anti-union stances as well. But just as a reminder here, let's go ahead and get into some of the details. They say Elon Musk criticized new incentives and infrastructure for electric vehicles in a huge spending bill that was backed by Joe Biden, saying he would delete the measures and even ditch the entire legislation if he had the power to. And just as a reminder, this Build Back Better legislation, it was completely watered down, hacked into a million pieces by corporate Democrats like Joe Manchin, who Elon Musk is a big fan of, and same with Jeff Bezos, as I covered in my video the other day. But it was hacked into a million pieces, but it still did have somewhat good policies that were left within it, right? The extension of the child tax credit, for example, free public college or free community college, lowering prescription drug prices, a bunch of other policies that would have just materially helped average working class families. But of course, Elon Musk has a big problem with that. And they say Musk, the multi-billionaire founder of the electric car company Tesla, said that if he were in charge of the federal government, I would just can this whole bill. That's my recommendation. The entrepreneur, speaking at a Wall Street Journal summit on Monday, added, it might be better if the bill doesn't pass because we've spent so much money, It's like the federal budget deficit is insane, okay? This guy, first of all, has throughout his entire career relied on government subsidies to prop up his companies as they have gone underwater, okay? Tesla would not be around right now if it wasn't for federal subsidies, okay? If it wasn't for the government propping up his capitalist enterprise. So for him to come out and just be against any federal legislation that invests in average working class families, while he never has a problem with, dumping trillions of dollars into endless wars or dumping trillions of dollars into corporate bailouts for him and his buddies, it's a direct contradiction and obviously hypocritical, but again, not very surprising. But they continue saying the spending includes significant incentives for Americans to leave behind polluting vehicles and opt instead to go electric, including a tax rebate that will offer up to $12,500 to anyone buying a zero emissions car. So you would think at face value that somebody who owns an electric car company would be in support of legislation that gives people tax incentives to be able to go buy his product in electric cars. But he didn't like this piece of legislation, and you're going to see why here in a second. They say there is also funding towards the president's goal of building out 500,000 new electric car charging stations across the US. Again, why would somebody like Elon Musk have a problem with that? Well, they say, but Musk, despite operating the world's largest electric vehicle maker, said that these measures are unnecessary commentary, he added, "Do we need federal support for gas stations? We don't, so there's no need for this. For support for a charging network, I would delete it, delete." So, asking this question, do we need support for gas stations? We prop up the global fossil fuel industry, well, global both, domestically here in the United States as well as in an international sense. We give them trillions and trillions of dollars every single year to prop up that industry. If it wasn't for fossil fuel subsidies to this industry, they would not be around anymore. We would be much more aggressively transitioning to renewable energy as a source. But, he doesn't talk about any of this. He basically just says we don't need any of these incentives. But they continue saying Musk, who in October became the first person to have a net financial worth of more than $300 billion, also did not welcome the bill's funding for public transit, I wonder why, seen as an important way to slash US emissions, instead touting the need to build more roads only underground. So I don't have a picture or a video pulled up, but if you guys remember, Elon Musk, like years ago, came out and he said, he still says this really, but he came out with a plan to solve traffic, right? He said he was going to be the guy with his corporations that was going to solve the problem of traffic within the United States. Now, at first, he was floating out ideas like, building underground tunnels or rail networks that could ferry, large amounts of people across huge sections of the United States, and it would do it in a very fast and efficient way. When it was that as a plan, I was somewhat in favor of it, right? I do think we need a, robust transit network here in the United States, and, investing in that at the federal level would be an absolutely great thing. But slowly but surely, as basically all of his plans do, it devolved into something completely different and utterly useless, to the point where now his idea or his solution for solving traffic in the United States is literally, no joke here, a one-lane tunnel, okay, that is underground, that's compact and tiny as fuck, a one-lane tunnel that only goes one way at a time for Tesla cars to drive through at like 30 to 40 miles an hour. And as we've seen in videos that I think I put before on this channel, they are already having problems with traffic. Not as if that was even in any way, shape, or form a legitimate idea to actually solve traffic. As if instead of having a robust train network around the country that can carry, dozens or hundreds or thousands of people at a time and do it in a very fast and efficient way, the idea that building single lane tunnels under the ground for Teslas was going to solve traffic, it's so fucking stupid that, it's remarkable that anybody thinks that this guy is a genius. But nonetheless, he is obviously against building public mass transit. And he said, quote, "In cities that are congested, we've got to do something about extreme traffic, which is some combination of double-decking freeways and building tunnels. This is the brain genius of the world, of the right, okay? This is the brain genius's idea of how to solve traffic, double-decking freeways and building tunnels like his Tesla tunnels that are like one-lane roads that only go one way and aren't even fast at all, okay? Completely idiotic and insane. But they say, said Musk, who in addition to running a car company also obviously founded the tunnel construction business called The Boring Company, so I wonder why he would have an incentive to defend these types of horrifically idiotic ideas. But they continue saying, critics were quick to point out that Musk himself has benefited from billions of dollars in government subsidies in order to get his various ventures off the ground, with Tesla making large sums from a system of zero emissions credits offered in California. And they finish off here saying Musk's opposition to the $12,500 tax credit may also stem from the fact that it applies to electric cars made in the US by a union workforce. So there's the answer. This is why Elon Musk was opposing this piece of legislation. He obviously, as the owner of an electric car company, you would think would be in favor, especially as a guy who pretends to be like, the person who's going to usher in this wave of future technology and transitioning us away from the destructive fossil fuel industry. You would think that that type of a guy who is self-proclaimed in that way would be in favor of getting as many electric cars on the roads as possible, regardless of who's making them. But instead, he turns around and he comes out against tax incentives for people to buy electric cars, specifically because it includes a provision that only allows these tax incentives to be given to car companies that are unionized. And obviously, Tesla is not unionized, so this wouldn't apply to his cars. So very transparently, single-mindedly focused on his own financial interests and, continuing his union-busting ways. But finally, they finish off here saying Tesla is not unionized, obviously. Other non-union automakers, including Toyota, Volkswagen, and BMW, have urged lawmakers to drop the discriminatory incentive. Discriminatory. against corporations who union bust and who do not allow their workers to have a democratic say in their workplace. That is considered discriminatory, okay? And they say, with the Mexican government also raising objections to the American-made stipulation. So again, the incentives here, the reasoning, the explanation for why he's against this are very obvious, but just one more point here. The Build Back Better legislation had massive, or not, I won't say massive, tepid increases in taxes on billionaires and corporations. Elon Musk, obviously, down here, as you can see, total income reported $1.52 billion, paid roughly 3.27% on his income tax rate. So, paying less than an average teacher or firefighter or whatever, nurse, etc. So, exactly another reason why he would not be in favor of something like Build Back Better. Also, Tesla paid $0 in federal tax. And they say here, despite Elon Musk's $11 billion personal tax bill, this is a little bit misleading because I've talked about this on the channel before, but this $11 billion number is not normal. It was only because he was forced to sell a large portion of his Tesla stock as they had run out of his stock options, and basically they had expired. So he had to sell them. Then he had to pay this one-time bill, and then pretty much went back to using the same buy, borrow, die strategy that we see billionaires use to avoid paying any income taxes at all. But of course, him and Tesla paying essentially zero federal taxes relative to their net worth. And of course, I had to bring you guys one of the most hilarious takes that I got from all of this online. We had Tim Pool beanie with, who knows what the hell is going on under that beanie, but he decided to give us his thoughts on this, and he said, maybe the left should reflect on why people are fleeing from them. Yeah, maybe the left should do some sitting down and reflect on why we are not able to maintain the dipshit billionaire vote. I mean, again, completely ridiculous. I don't want to be involved in any party, not that I'm associated with Democrats or Republicans. I don't really like electoral politics that much, but nonetheless, not exactly somebody who I would want to be within my ranks within the Democratic Party. And in fact, people like Joe Biden and the rest of Democrats should be leaning in to this hatred of billionaires that they are getting. This is something that Bernie Sanders did so well when he was running in 2020 and 2016 as well, is, he was going out there and literally roasting billionaires who were crying on TV about his scary socialist plans that he was going to be implementing and raising their taxes, etc. This is something that the overwhelming majority of Americans like to see. They like to see you go to war with the billionaire class, the elites, the people who are screwing them over in their day-to-day jobs that they are having to show up and work for to get exploited on a mass scale. So, lean into that if I'm the Democratic Party, but, Joe Biden, very tepid support for unions. I doubt that he's going to be leaning into that very heavily, but I thought that this was all absolutely hilarious. No surprises. Dude like Elon Musk, a union busting billionaire, richest man on the planet, is obviously not too much of a fan of the current state of the Democratic Party.